I get asked about Bruce Lee all the time, and I can tell you that his sidekick was spectacular.
In 1964, a young Bruce Lee was invited to a martial arts demonstration in San Francisco, not as a star performer, but as a sideshow act. A gimmick. The plan was simple: let the fast-talking Chinese kid throw a few flashy moves to entertain the crowd. But what happened next wasn't just unexpected, it was historic. That day, Lee didn't just shock the audience, he ignited a quiet war within the martial arts world. This wasn't a stunt, it was the moment Bruce Lee began reshaping the very foundation of combat philosophy. The event that started it all, the air inside the Sun Sing Theater in San Francisco, was thick with anticipation. The crowd, made up of martial artists, curious locals, and a few skeptics, buzzed with energy as the night's demonstrations began. Traditional kung fu forms were performed with elegance, Tai Chi practitioners moved like water, and the occasional breaking board got a respectful round of applause. Then came the final act. A wiry, charismatic young man with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue stepped onto the stage. His name, Bruce Lee. At the time, barely anyone outside of a small martial arts circle knew who he was. He wasn't the main attraction. In fact, he wasn't even supposed to be taken seriously. Bruce had been invited as a bit of flash and flair, a gimmick to spice up the evening. Young, brash, and blending Eastern roots with Western swagger, he didn't fit the mold of the quiet, humble martial arts master. Instead, he moved like lightning, talked like a philosopher, and hit like a truck. The organizers thought he'd show off a few moves, say a few cool things in English, and bow out. What they got was something entirely different. Bruce began by demonstrating techniques that seemed almost supernatural. He moved faster than most people could register. His punches snapped through the air like gunshots. But the real showstopper, the one that got everyone leaning forward in their seats, was his now legendary one-inch punch. Bruce invited a volunteer to stand before him, feet planted, arms crossed, waiting. Then, without drawing his arm back, Bruce exploded forward with a strike that traveled barely an inch and sent the man staggering back like he'd been shoved by a cannon. But here's the twist. It didn't work the first time. That initial punch landed, sure, but the man didn't move. For a second, there was silence. Then, laughter. Some in the crowd thought it was part of the show. Others thought Bruce had missed the mark. A few spectators even started flicking cigarette butts at his feet, a gesture of pure disrespect. Bruce's jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed. He tried again, and this time the man flew back, stumbling into a chair. The crowd went wild, but Bruce wasn't smiling. He felt mocked. The laughter still echoed in his ears. The disrespect, the misunderstanding of his intent, and the fact that he was seen as a performer rather than a warrior. It all boiled over. Then came the spark. Bruce stepped forward and issued a challenge, not to a specific person, but to everyone in the audience. If anyone doubted him, if anyone thought he was a fraud or a showman, step up. Prove it. Silence. No one moved. But outside that theater, Bruce had just lit a fire that would spread through the martial arts community like wildfire. That night wasn't supposed to matter. It was just another demo, another round of polite applause and flashy moves. But Bruce had turned it into something else entirely. He hadn't just demonstrated technique, he'd thrown down a gauntlet. And somewhere in the crowd, someone picked it up. His name was Wong Jack Man, and he wasn't going to let the challenge go unanswered. The silent challenger. Somewhere in the back of that buzzing theater, amid the stunned silence and scattered applause, stood a man who wasn't laughing. He wasn't impressed. He wasn't intimidated. His name was Wong Jack Man, and to him, Bruce Lee wasn't a revelation. He was a provocation. Wong wasn't just another martial artist. He was a skilled practitioner of Northern Shaolin, Xing Yi Quan, and Tai Chi, all traditional Chinese systems that valued discipline, humility, and hierarchy. Where Bruce was fast-talking and flashy, Wong was quiet and methodical. Where Bruce defied convention, Wong was convention, steeped in the lineage of Chinese martial arts and the customs that came with it. And to him, Bruce had crossed a line, not just by showing off, but by making public challenges. In traditional Chinese martial culture, that was deeply disrespectful. You didn't call people out. You didn't grandstand. You didn't turn martial arts into a spectacle. Bruce Lee had just walked into Chinatown, spit in the face of tradition, and dared anyone to step up. So Wong did. He didn't walk up to Bruce on the spot. That wasn't his style. Instead, within days of the demonstration, Bruce received a letter, hand-delivered by mutual acquaintance David Chin. It was polite, respectful, and clear. Wong Jack Man wanted to fight. Not in public, not in a theater, in private. Just the two of them. No audience, no glory. Just a test of skill, mano a mano. Bruce accepted immediately. To him, this wasn't just another challenge. This was the ultimate test. A chance to prove that his martial arts philosophy wasn't just loud, it was legit. He believed traditional styles were too rigid, too slow, too ceremonial. He believed real fights didn't care about forms and rituals. They were fast, ugly, and chaotic. This was his chance to show it, to prove that what he had created, his own style, his own fusion of Wing Chun, boxing, fencing, and street smarts, was the future. The fight was scheduled for Bruce's own school in Oakland in late 1964. It would take place behind closed doors with only a handful of witnesses. Among them were Linda Lee, Bruce's wife, a few students, and some trusted members of the Chinese martial arts community. There were no cameras, no reporters, just bare floors, open space, and raw tension. What exactly happened that day has become the stuff of legend, because no two people agree. Some say Bruce ended the fight in under 3 minutes, chasing Wong down, knocking him over, and forcing him to submit. That version came from Bruce and Linda, and it spread fast. Others, including Wong, tell a very different story. He claimed Bruce came at him wildly, throwing everything he had, but gassed out quickly. Wong said he landed multiple counterstrikes and chose not to finish the fight out of mercy. In his words, Bruce was trying to kill me, but Wong claimed he trapped him several times and let him go. Even the witnesses couldn't agree. Some said Bruce looked like an animal, explosive, ruthless, unstoppable. Others said he was frustrated and sloppy, struggling to land clean shots. Some claimed the fight lasted 20 minutes or more. Others swore it was over in 3. To this day, no definitive account exists. The only certainty is this: it changed Bruce Lee forever. Because whether he won or not, Bruce left that fight shaken. Not in his confidence, but in his philosophy. He realized something that day. It shouldn't have taken that long. It shouldn't have been that messy. For all his skill and speed, he'd been dragged into a brawl. A real fight. And real fights didn't care about how many forms you knew or how fast your hands were. They cared about efficiency, about results. That's when Bruce made a decision. Traditional martial arts weren't enough. He had to go further. He had to evolve. And from that moment on, Bruce Lee was no longer just a fighter. He became a revolutionary. Who really won? The debate that never died. If there's one thing more intense than the fight between Bruce Lee and Wong Jack Man, it's the argument over what actually happened. No cameras, no recordings, just a handful of people in a small Oakland martial arts school and a story that would split into 2 timelines the moment the fight ended. To this day, the question lingers like smoke. Who really won? Let's start with Bruce's side. According to Bruce and his wife, Linda Lee, the fight was fast, decisive, and one-sided. Bruce came in hard, threw Wong off with a flurry of attacks, and within 3 minutes, Wong had turned and run across the room, essentially giving up. Linda said Bruce had to literally chase him down, tackle him, and pin him, forcing Wong to surrender. The fight, she said, ended not with a knockout, but with exhaustion and surrender. Bruce was furious afterward, not because he lost, but because it took too long. He expected it to be over in seconds. From Bruce's perspective, it wasn't a question of winning or losing. He won, period. But the real takeaway was how much harder it had been than expected. That realization haunted him far more than any bruise or punch. Now, let's flip the script. Wong Jack Man, soft-spoken, traditional, and never a self-promoter, kept quiet at first. For months, even years, he said nothing. But eventually, when Bruce's version of the story started turning him into the loser in martial arts folklore, Wong came forward with his own account. And it was completely different. According to Wong, Bruce attacked like a madman, wild, aggressive, and winded within 5 minutes. Wong said he stayed calm, focused, and landed clean hits. He even claimed he could have ended the fight multiple times, but chose not to, out of respect for tradition and fear of legal consequences. In Wong's words, the fight was not about destruction. He wasn't there to hurt Bruce, only to teach him a lesson. And in his version of events, Bruce learned that lesson the hard way. So who's telling the truth? That depends on who you ask. Eyewitnesses who were there, or claim they were, are all over the place. Some said Bruce was clearly the winner. Others said Wong held his own, or even looked better, technically. Some called it a draw. Others said it wasn't a proper fight at all. It was a brawl. The confusion comes down to one thing: perspective. Everyone walked into that room with their own expectations, their own loyalties, their own philosophies, and they saw what they wanted, or were conditioned to see. But maybe the more important question isn't who won. Maybe the better question is, what did Bruce Lee take away from it? Because after that fight, everything changed. Bruce disappeared into his training, rethinking every technique, every philosophy, every assumption he'd ever held. He realized that neither traditional kung fu nor pure aggression was enough. He needed to strip martial arts down to its core, to find something faster, smarter, and more adaptable. That fight didn't break Bruce. It forged him. And ironically, Wong Jack Man, whether he won, lost, or held back, became the accidental catalyst for one of the greatest martial arts revolutions in history. Was Bruce as dominant as he claimed? Was Wong as composed as he insisted? We'll probably never know. Bruce's existential crisis. The fight was over. The crowd had gone home. Wong Jack Man returned to his school. And Bruce Lee? He shut the doors to the outside world and started asking questions no martial artist in America had dared to ask out loud. He'd won, or at least hadn't lost. But it didn't feel like a victory. Not to him. Bruce wasn't satisfied. He wasn't inspired. He was frustrated. No, more than that, he was shaken. He had walked into that fight believing his training, his instincts, and his evolving style were superior. He thought he would dismantle Wong in seconds. Instead, the fight dragged out into a chaotic, breathless scrap that left Bruce winded and introspective. It wasn't just about beating an opponent. It was about whether what he believed was true. And in that moment, something cracked open inside him. Bruce realized that everything he had learned up to that point, all the Wing Chun drills, the traditional stances, the training patterns, they hadn't fully prepared him for real combat. Sure, he was fast. Sure, he could hit hard, but reality didn't follow the rules. There were no forms, no scripts, just two people throwing everything they had at each other. He began to question everything. Why do martial artists spend so much time memorizing fixed sequences? Why train for elegance when efficiency wins the fight. Why teach students to block strikes that will never come in real life? This wasn't just a technical reevaluation, it was an identity crisis. Bruce started rethinking the entire purpose of martial arts. What good was tradition if it failed in reality? What good were rules if your opponent didn't follow them? He wasn't just critiquing techniques, he was challenging the core of thousands of years of martial philosophy. In private, he began experimenting. He ripped apart his own style, dissecting what worked and what didn't. He studied boxing, fencing, wrestling, street fighting. He stopped thinking in terms of styles and started thinking in terms of movement, timing, adaptability, and reality. Bruce Lee, the proud Wing Chun student and Chinese martial arts ambassador, started mutating into something else, something dangerous, controversial, and utterly original. He wrote frantically in notebooks. He tested new combinations. He trained like a man possessed, but no longer for tradition or appearances. Now, it was all about truth. Combat, truth. And the truth was this: no single style could prepare you for everything. The fight with Wong Jack Man may never have had a clear winner, but in Bruce's mind, it delivered a clear message: evolve or stay stuck, adapt or die. What began as a public challenge became a private revolution, and within a few short years, that revolution would have a name: Jeet Kune Do, the birth of a new way. If the fight with Wong Jack Man lit the fuse, then Jeet Kune Do was the explosion that followed. In the aftermath of that intense private duel, Bruce Lee didn't just revise his fighting style, he dismantled it. He burned the rulebook, questioned everything, and set out to rebuild martial arts from the ground up. Everything he had trained in, Wing Chun, traditional drills, even parts of his own technique, now felt incomplete, limited, or just plain outdated. To Bruce, the problem wasn't just what he had learned, it was the very idea that martial arts should be fixed, rigid, and bound by tradition. From this inner fire and frustration, a new philosophy was born. Bruce called it Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. But more than a name, it was a declaration. Jeet Kune Do wasn't a new style. It was the rejection of style itself. It wasn't about forms, uniforms, belts, or ceremonies. It was about what worked. What got results in the chaos of a real fight. The goal wasn't to look impressive. It was to end a fight quickly, cleanly, and efficiently. This marked a seismic shift in martial arts thinking. Bruce believed that traditional systems focused too much on memorization and repetition. Choreographed movements that looked great in theory but fell apart under pressure. In a real fight, there was no time for formal stances or pre-arranged counters. There was only reaction, instinct, and execution. Jeet Kune Do embraced the principle of minimal movement, maximum impact. If a move didn't serve a direct purpose, it was stripped away. Bruce trained himself and his students to intercept attacks before they fully developed, to strike first, with timing and precision, not brute force. What made Jeet Kune Do even more revolutionary was Bruce's approach to learning. He didn't believe in being confined to one school of thought or tradition. He studied everything: boxing, fencing, wrestling, judo, street fighting, and more. He looked at what each discipline did well and absorbed the most practical elements. His motto became famous: absorb what is useful, discard what is not, add what is uniquely your own. This wasn't just cross-training, it was intellectual rebellion in physical form. Bruce was breaking down martial arts into its purest essence and rebuilding it based on truth, not tradition. But Jeet Kune Do wasn't only about efficiency, it was also deeply personal. Bruce believed that every fighter needed to discover their own rhythm, their own balance, and their own truth in combat. That meant experimentation. It meant trusting yourself. Jeet Kune Do, at its core, was a method of self-expression. Bruce once said that all knowledge ultimately leads to self-knowledge. And in the world of fighting, that meant throwing off the chains of imitation and finding your own way. He famously told students, to be like water. Water doesn't resist. It adapts. It flows around obstacles, takes the shape of any container, and crashes when necessary. That became Bruce's metaphor for both martial arts and life itself. Flexibility over rigidity, adaptability over dogma. It was simple, elegant, and profound. And most importantly, it worked. Long before the term mixed martial arts entered the mainstream, Bruce was already doing it. He wasn't just ahead of his time, he was in another dimension entirely. While most schools clung to lineage and loyalty, Bruce was already training with gloves, mouthpieces, and live sparring. His approach was raw, honest, and undeniably effective. Fighters today still echo his techniques. The UFC has called him the father of modern MMA, and with good reason. By the end of the 60s, Bruce Lee had transcended the role of martial artist. He had become a philosopher, a teacher, and a disruptor. Jeet Kune Do wasn't just about learning how to fight, it was about learning how to think, how to live, how to strip away illusion and deal with reality head-on. And it all began with a single fight, a single doubt, a moment of crisis that forced Bruce to question everything and, in doing so, gave the world something completely original. Jeet Kune Do wasn't a style you could bottle. It wasn't a curriculum you could copy. It was a way to break free. And that's exactly what Bruce Lee did. The legend that emerged. After creating Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee's life took a dramatic turn. He wasn't just a martial artist anymore, he was becoming a cultural icon. But this transformation didn't happen overnight. It was the result of relentless work, determination, and a vision that stretched far beyond fighting. Bruce knew his philosophy and skills were revolutionary, but he also understood that most people had never heard of him. To change that, he needed a bigger platform. That platform came in the form of Hollywood. But even Hollywood wasn't ready for Bruce at first. Despite his incredible skill and charisma, studios didn't see an Asian man as a leading star in the 60s. Roles were limited to stereotypes, and many doors closed. Yet Bruce's persistence was unshakable. He didn't settle for small parts or exotic side characters. Instead, he decided to create his own opportunities. In 1971, Bruce returned to Hong Kong, where his revolutionary style and magnetic presence caught fire. His film The Big Boss was a smashing hit, followed quickly by Fist of Fury and Way of the Dragon. For the first time, the world saw Bruce Lee as more than just a martial artist. He was a hero, a philosopher, and a force of nature. His movements were poetry in motion, his fighting style both beautiful and brutal. He broke barriers, culturally, racially, and artistically, showing the world that martial arts could be both deeply traditional and fiercely modern. Bruce Lee's rise wasn't just about physical skill. It was about his ideas, his philosophy, and his relentless belief in personal freedom. He challenged the old ways, pushed boundaries, and inspired millions. His influence transcended martial arts, touching music, fashion, fitness, and even film choreography. He became a symbol of empowerment, showing that strength came from inside as much as outside. Sadly, Bruce's life was cut tragically short in 1973, at just 32 years old. But his legacy was already cemented. Jeet Kune Do lived on through his writings, students, and the countless martial artists he inspired around the globe. His story, the fight that shocked everyone, the revolution it sparked, and the philosophy it birthed, continues to captivate and inspire. Lee's influence stretches far beyond martial arts gyms and fight scenes. Over the decades, he has become one of the most recognizable and enduring icons in global pop culture, a symbol of strength, charisma, and cultural crossover that continues to inspire and shape entertainment, fashion, music, and even social movements around the world. How? This is how. The unstoppable icon. Long after his untimely death, Bruce Lee's image and persona have remained deeply ingrained in film and media. His films didn't just popularize martial arts, they created a blueprint for action heroes. Before Bruce, the average leading man in Hollywood was rarely a martial artist, let alone an Asian martial artist. Bruce Lee shattered stereotypes, not only by being a strong, dynamic lead, but by blending philosophy and intensity with raw physicality. His influence can be seen in countless films, from the relentless action of John Woo's Hong Kong cinema to Hollywood blockbusters starring martial artists like Jackie Chan, Jet Li, and Donnie Yen. Even Western actors such as Sylvester Stallone, Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Keanu Reeves have cited Bruce as a crucial inspiration, showing how he bridged East and West in a way few others could. Bruce Lee's legacy is also evident in the rise of the martial arts action genre itself. Movies today wouldn't be what they are without the groundwork he laid. The blend of tightly choreographed fight sequences with philosophical undercurrents? That's Bruce's signature. Directors and stunt coordinators worldwide continue to study his moves and film style to capture that perfect balance of speed, power, and personality. Bruce Lee was not just a martial artist or actor. He was a style icon ahead of his time. His look, the sleek, athletic physique combined with simple yet striking clothing choices, has inspired fashion trends that echo decades later. Remember the yellow jumpsuit from Game of Death? It's not just a costume, it's a cultural symbol. That outfit has been referenced, parodied, and paid homage to in everything from video games like Dead or Alive and Mortal Kombat to music videos and even high-fashion runways. The bright yellow suit with black stripes has become an instantly recognizable piece of pop culture, a statement of rebellion and individuality. Beyond costumes, Bruce's personal style, his clean, confident presence, has inspired countless fashion icons and designers. From casual streetwear to high fashion, elements of his minimalistic yet bold aesthetic continue to surface. His muscular but lean physique set new standards for masculinity and athleticism that influence how people train and dress even today. Bruce Lee's influence also resonates deeply within music. Various genres and artists have drawn inspiration from his philosophy, charisma, and image. Hip-hop, for example, has embraced Bruce Lee as a symbol of strength and resilience. Many rappers have referenced him in lyrics, and his likeness appears on album covers and in music videos. The symbolism of Bruce as a fighter who defies odds resonates with artists pushing against societal boundaries. His legendary status as a cultural rebel fits perfectly into hip-hop's narrative of struggle and triumph. Songs like Wu-Tang Clan Ain't Nothing to F Wit famously incorporate Bruce Lee's imagery and philosophy, tying martial arts metaphors to street wisdom and personal power. Bruce as a cultural hero. If you've ever played a fighting game or read a comic book with a martial artist hero, chances are Bruce Lee's shadow is there. His moves, style, and persona have inspired countless characters in animation and gaming. Video games like Tekken, Street Fighter, Shooters, and Mortal Kombat include characters that borrow heavily from Bruce's fighting style, agility, and even his signature vocal sounds. The fast, fluid combos and explosive kicks mirror Bruce's trademark style, and game designers openly acknowledge his influence as foundational. Animated series and comic books, particularly in the West and East Asia, have created characters directly inspired by Bruce Lee's image: strong, fast, intelligent warriors who stand for justice and resilience. These portrayals help introduce his legacy to younger generations in fun, engaging ways that keep the spirit of his philosophy alive, cultural symbol of empowerment and identity. For Asian communities, especially in America, Bruce Lee was a groundbreaking figure who challenged racial stereotypes and gave representation where there was little. He was proud of his heritage and unapologetic about breaking into an industry that often marginalized Asian actors. His success offered a new narrative, that Asians could be strong, charismatic, and leading figures on the global stage. That narrative resonated beyond martial arts. It helped pave the way for more inclusive casting and storytelling in Hollywood and beyond. Moreover, Bruce Lee became a symbol of individual empowerment. His philosophy of self-expression, constant growth, and being like water inspired not just martial artists, but anyone striving to overcome obstacles. From entrepreneurs to athletes, creatives to activists, Bruce's words and image have become a source of motivation and strength. He is often quoted in motivational speeches and self-help circles, transcending his original martial arts context to become a universal symbol of resilience, focus, and self-belief. The enduring mystery and mythos. Bruce Lee's pop culture status is also fueled by the mythos that surrounds him. His sudden death at the peak of his career sparked countless conspiracy theories, documentaries, books, and films, all trying to capture the man behind the legend. This mystery only heightened his cultural allure. Bruce became more than a person. He became a mythic figure, a symbol of potential cut short, a cultural hero frozen in time. This aura has been mined for decades, in everything from graphic novels to podcasts, keeping his story fresh and relevant. The Bruce Lee Museum in Hong Kong, annual fan events worldwide, and countless fan clubs testify to how his legacy remains a living, breathing part of pop culture. Not just nostalgia, but an ongoing inspiration. Even in the digital age, Bruce Lee remains a fixture. His image is everywhere on social media, from memes to inspirational quotes. Memes sometimes poke fun at his intensity or famous one-liners, but often they celebrate his philosophy of adaptability and strength. He has become a shorthand for mastery, discipline, and unstoppable energy in the online world. His influence also extends into viral fitness challenges, workout videos, and lifestyle brands that use his name and image to sell everything from supplements to apparel. His iconic presence is instantly recognizable, even to younger generations who might never have seen his films. Because of that so-called gimmick martial arts display Bruce attended, the world was stunned, not just by a fight won or lost, but by the birth of a legend who forever changed martial arts and popular culture. Thanks for watching. If you want similar content, feel free to subscribe to the channel.